Hi, today we're going to be talking about the relationship between independent and dependent variables. All right, so an independent variable is a variable that will affect some other outcome or some other type of variable. So let's say that we have our independent variable on the x-axis. Our independent variable is always going to be represented on this horizontal x-axis, okay? So our dependent variable is going to be on our vertical y-axis. Okay, so vertical y-axis is going to be our dependent variable, whereas the independent variable is going to be represented on the x or the horizontal axis. All right, so here are some vocabulary words. We could call this horizontal axis the horizontal axis, or we could call it the independent variable axis. Or if we're using x as a variable, we would call it the x-axis. So all of those terms refer to the exact same thing. Likewise, for our vertical axis, we could call it the vertical axis. We could also call it our y-axis if we're using y as a variable. And we can also call it the dependent axis. So we could use any of those terms to talk about what we have going on in here in this cross formation. Now, each of these points on the axes are going to represent increments. Now, the increments could go by 1, 2, 3, so it certainly could be this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we're going to use 1 as an increment, which we can in this case if we want to, then if we go to the right, they are going up, 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the way to infinity. That's what this arrow right here is implying. Then, if we go to the left on the axis, it would be going into negative numbers, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, all the way to negative infinity. By going by tick marks of 1 in each direction, okay? So that's called our scale. So we're going by a scale of 1. Okay, so if we want, we could also go by a scale of 1 on the y or the vertical axis. We don't have to go by a scale of 1. It's just if we are trying to make a graph where we want to go up by ones, we can certainly do that. Remember that each increment needs to be constant. So if I'm going to choose to go by ones, I have to go by ones the whole time. I can't go from here to here and that's 1, and then here to here, that's 5. Whatever the scale that I pick is totally fine, but I do need to stick with it for this particular graph. So if I'm going up by ones, I need to go down by ones. So this would be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, down to negative infinity. All right, so here we've set up our x, or independent axis, and we set up our y, or our dependent axis, and we have the different scales. In this case, we have scales on the x-axis being 1, and the scale on the y-axis also being 1. That does not mean that we need to always be locked into that, okay? And we will show different kinds of scales in the following videos. But right now, let's just use a scale of 1 tick mark means 1 unit, all right? And if we want to be able to plot a point, all right, then let's say we put a point right here, okay? So, in order to have two different people be able to read the same map, we need to read it in the same way, okay? So if we want to, I'm going to put an X here because X marks the spot. So think of this as like a treasure map. Let's say we have two people and they're both looking at a map and they're trying to describe it to each other, okay? So if they're describing a location, you could think of this as location on a map. We need to be able to figure out how much this way we're talking about and how much this way we're talking about. What we've decided is that we're going to always think about how much to the right or to the left we're going first, and then, secondly, we're going to talk about how much up or down we are going. So if we're starting here at the origin, this is called the origin, where the value of the x, or the independent value, the independent variable, is 0, because we haven't moved left or right. And we haven't moved up or down either. So not only is the x value 0 right at this origin, but the y value is 0 at this origin, okay? So we could call this 0, 0, or we could call it the origin, okay? So the origin is always 0, 0. No matter what the scale is, if we go up by 1s, or if we go up by 2s, or by 8s, the place where the two axes intercept, okay, or cross, is called the origin, and it's always going to be 0, 0. Okay, meaning the x value is 0 at that point, and the y value is 0 at that point. All right, so now we're always going to have to communicate with other people in a very consistent manner. So what we've decided is that and this is all for everyone who's dealing with math, we all need to decide on the same thing. And what we've decided is we're going to tell how much right or left we've gone, and then the second bit of information is how much up or down we've gone. So in order to name this spot where this x is, we're going to count our x value first. So we're going to put our x value first, and it's 1, 2, 3. So we've gone to the right 3. And then we're going to talk about how much up or down we are. And so we go up 1, all right? So 3, 1 is the coordinate, all right? It's the coordinate. It's the information that represents the exact location of that x, okay? So to generalize, we always put the x value first in a coordinate and the y value second. And there you go.